In this video, we're going to talk about information system in context diagrams. This is a type of diagram that you need to be able to draw for IPT. It should not be confused with the context diagram, which we've already covered. Here's an example of a context diagram, which shows the system, the external entities, and the data flow within the system. An information systems in context diagram is similar to a context diagram in that it's a diagram that explains an information system, but the layout is different. There are several different parts of an information system in context diagram that you'll need to know about. The different parts are the environment, users, the boundary, the purpose, the information processes, participants, data and information technology. We'll go through what each of these mean one by one. The environment means anything that the system is reliant on but is not part of the system. So if we take an example of an ATM, the ATM is reliant on electric. It is also reliant on the internet. These are both separate systems that an ATM requires, but they're not part of an ATM system, so they're part of the environment. If there was no electric, the ATM wouldn't work. If there was no internet, the ATM wouldn't work. The next part of the diagram are the users. This is anybody that makes use of the system. If we think of an example of a checkout at a supermarket, these can either be direct users or indirect users, in that the till operator is a user of the system. They would be classed as a direct user because they're the one that scans the item and enters the barcode and actually inputs data into the system. The customer, who is essentially using the system but does not directly input any data, would be known as an indirect user. So there are two types of user: a direct user or an indirect user. The boundary surrounds the information system. It's this line here. Anything that's inside of the boundary is part of the system. Anything that is outside of the boundary is not part of the system. The purpose is the reason why the information system exists. There may be several purposes, or there may only be one. For example, an ATM has several purposes. It allows the user to check their balance, it allows the user to transfer money, it allows the user to take money out. There's several different purposes for an ATM. The information processes are the processes that occur within the system in order to change data into information. We'll look at these at a later date. At the moment, we just need to know that they exist. The participants are a special kind of user. These are the direct users who actually input data into the system or receive information out of the system. So in our example of a checkout information system, the checkout operator would be a participant, but the customer, who does not actually input any data into the system, would not be a participant. If we were thinking about a self-service checkout though, the customer would be a participant because they are actually inputting data into the system and receiving information out firsthand. The data in the information would be a list of all the data that is inputted into the system and all the information that is gained from the system. The information technology is a list of all the information technology that's required if you were going to build a system. So this includes software and hardware. We'll now go through an example and complete an information system in context diagram for an example. If we consider our example of a training thresholds information system, well, I have inputted my name and my age and this is giving me information on my maximal heart rate and my upper threshold and lower threshold for training. Let's put this data for the information system into an information systems in context diagram. So first of all, what's part of the environment and what does this system rely on? Well, in order to be able to use the system, I need electric. And I also need use of the internet because it's an interactive form. Without these two things, the information system wouldn't work. But they're not part of the information system, so they're part of the environment. So, who are the users? In our case, we're going to name these as a fitness customer. Okay, what is the purpose of the information system? So there are two purposes for this information system. One is to inform the customer of their maximal heart rate. And two is to inform the customer of their training thresholds. And we can also put in 3 here that is designed to be interactive. It's not just a standard written list where the customer has to just read their information off a list. They actually put their name in and it calculates their personal maximal heart rate and their personal training thresholds. For information processes, we're just going to leave this blank at the moment and look at this at a later date. For participants, remember, are people that actively put data in or receive information. So in this case, the users are the same as the participants. For data and information, this is split into 2 sections, one for data and one for information. So first of all, we'll list the pieces of data that are put into the system. So the first thing is the name. And the second thing is the age. For the information that's gained out of it, we have maximal heart rate and upper threshold and lower threshold. Now we need to think about the information technology that's required. That's both the software and the hardware. So in this case, let's concentrate on the software first. You're going to need an operating system, which in our case is Mac OS X. You're going to need Excel or some type of spreadsheet software. We're also going to need some hardware. So we need to have a computer as well as a keyboard, and we're going to need a mouse, and we're going to need a router in order to connect to the internet. And if in my case I'm using a laptop, but if I'm using a desktop, then I also need a monitor. So I'm just going to list all the pieces of information technology that I require if I was going to build or use this piece of software. So now you can see that we've completed our information systems in context diagram. It's always a good idea to have drawn your context diagram beforehand, and then you can use the data from your context diagram for your information systems in context diagram.